Do you know about the mysterious dancing plague which led to thousands of deaths in the 16th century? Let's find out about it. In July 1518, in Strasbourg, France, a strange event began. Frau Trofea, a local woman, suddenly started dancing in the town square, without reason or music. Her erratic movements shocked the onlookers as she danced uncontrollably for hours. Despite blistering heat, Frau Trofea continued to dance. Her face was contorted in pain, her feet swollen and bruised, but she couldn't stop. The crowd watched in horror as she danced well into the night. Within days, more people joined her. Men, women, and even children, each caught in the same terrifying frenzy. By the end of the week, over 30 people were dancing uncontrollably, their bodies jerking and convulsing in the square. Families, gripped by fear, kept their distance. They watched helplessly as loved ones were consumed by the strange affliction. Some whispered it was the work of the devil, others believed it was a curse upon the town. Strasbourg's authorities quickly took action. Physicians were called, and town leaders gathered to discuss the cause of this strange outbreak. Was it disease, madness, or something more sinister? Doctors of the time believed the afflicted were suffering from hot blood, an imbalance of the humors. Their solution? More dancing. They believed the only way to cure the madness was to let it run its course. A stage was built in the town square, and musicians were hired to play day and night. The authorities hoped that controlled dancing would allow the afflicted to dance out their madness, bringing an end to the plague. Instead, the situation grew worse. Over 100 people were now caught in a strange frenzy, dancing with a desperate intensity. Their feet were bloodied, their faces pale with exhaustion, yet they could not stop. Days turned into a nightmare. Dancers collapsed from sheer exhaustion, only to rise and continue moving. Some suffered heart attacks and strokes, their bodies pushed beyond human limits. For many, this dance would be their last. Families pleaded for their loved ones to stop, but no force could break the spell. Mothers, fathers, and children, all gripped by the same irresistible urge to dance, were helpless against the invisible power controlling them. As the death toll rose, the church stepped in. Priests marched through the streets, holding crosses and chanting prayers. They believed the dancers were possessed by demons and sought divine intervention to stop the madness. Even at night, the dancing didn't stop. The town square, lit by torches, was filled with ghostly figures swaying and jerking in the flickering light. It seemed as though the affliction had taken full control of their bodies. Dancers began to collapse, their bodies giving in to the relentless movement. Some fainted from dehydration and fatigue. Others died where they stood, their bodies spent from days without rest or water. Doctors and healers grew increasingly frustrated. Their theories of hot blood and imbalanced humors had failed. The town's leaders were running out of options, as more people continued to fall under the plague's spell. Was this a case of mass hysteria brought on by famine and disease, or something more supernatural? Some believed this was divine punishment, while others whispered of darker, more sinister forces at work. Still, the town's leaders refused to believe the end was near. More stages were built, and musicians played louder. Despite the deaths, they clung to the hope that more dancing could somehow bring the plague to an end. Even as bodies dropped, more people joined the frenzied dance. It was as if they were compelled by some invisible force. Hesitation soon gave way to wild, uncontrolled movement, and the cycle continued. Religious leaders resorted to more extreme measures. Monks and priests performed exorcisms, chanting and waving incense to drive away the evil spirits they believed were responsible. But still, the dancers remained in their nightmarish trance. Even the musicians who had been hired to keep the dancers moving grew afraid. Their once lively tunes now felt dark and foreboding as they watched people dance themselves to death. But they had no choice but to continue playing. Finally, a desperate plan was formed. The remaining dancers were taken out of Strasbourg and led to the shrine of Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers. The hope was that prayers to the saint would bring an end to their torment. At the shrine, the afflicted were blessed with holy water. Priests prayed over them, asking for divine mercy. Slowly, the dancers' movements began to subside. Their bodies, once uncontrollable, finally found stillness. Remarkably, those who made the pilgrimage began to recover. The frenzied dancing faded, and for the first time in weeks, peace returned to their bodies. The madness had lifted, at least for those who survived the ordeal. Back in Strasbourg, the stages were abandoned. The once bustling square now stood eerily silent. The survivors tried to rebuild their lives, but the memory of the dancing plague would haunt the town for years to come. Historians, doctors, and religious leaders still debated what had caused the outbreak. Was it mass hysteria, a response to the famine and disease of the time, or something more mysterious? The true cause of the dancing plague remains unknown. The dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's greatest mysteries. A strange, uncontrollable force gripped the people of Strasbourg, leading many to dance to their deaths. And though centuries have passed, the mystery of the dancing plague lives on.